video games. They're changing how we play, learn, and connect with one another. Now, the time has come to honor those video games that are the most widely recognized and remembered. Games that have enjoyed long popularity. Games that hold significance throughout the world, influencing other games, entertainment, and popular culture.
Welcome to the second annual World Video Game Hall of Fame induction ceremony. I'm John Paul Dyson, director of the Strong's International Center for the History of Electronic Games. We're delighted to welcome members of the museum's Board of Trustees, members of the World Video Game Hall of Fame Advisory Committee, museum guests, and representatives of the media. For those of you using social media throughout the induction, we're using the hashtag VideoGameHall, and the museum's Twitter handle is @MuseumOfPlay. Everything we do at the Strong is founded on the understanding that play is an essential activity, critical to learning and human development. Play also helps us understand cultural history, and electronic gameplay, especially, has changed how people play, learn, and connect with each other, including across boundaries of culture and geography. Through the World Video Game Hall of Fame, the Strong recognizes games of all types, arcade, console, computer, handheld, and mobile, that have enjoyed popularity over a sustained period and have exerted influence on the video game industry or on popular culture and society in general. This year, 15 games meeting the basic criteria were considered by the International Selection Advisory Committee. Those games are Elite, Final Fantasy, Grand Theft Auto 3, John Madden Football, The Legend of Zelda, Minecraft, Nürburgring, The Oregon Trail, Pokémon Red and Green, Sid Meier's Civilization, The Sims, Sonic the Hedgehog, Space Invaders, Street Fighter II, and Tomb Raider. In a moment, my colleagues, Jeremy Saucier and Shannon Simons, will help me announce the 2016 class of the World Video Game Hall of Fame. Following the announcement, Jeremy, Shannon, and I will be available for questions and interviews, and some versions of the inducted games will also be available for play. Now, let's welcome our first inductee. Play is the brain's favorite way of learning, and our first inductee introduced millions of children to computers and American history. Programmed on a primitive teletype printer in a Minnesota school in 1971, by 3 young student teachers. This game cast players as intrepid settlers crossing the continent by covered wagon in 1848. It took smarts and good choices to survive. What supplies should you bring? When food was low, should you hunt or press on? Hazards loomed, broken wagon axles, lame oxen, disease. Savvy players made it to the end, and everyone learned a lot along the way. Students loved the game, but when co-creator Don Rawich finished his student teaching, he printed out the program's code, then deleted it. There, the journey might have ended. The story of this pioneering simulation might have come to its final point. But in 1974, he got a job with the Minnesota Education Computer Consortium, which brought to schools all over Minnesota and then nationwide. It's perhaps the oldest continuously available video game ever made. Programmed on a mainframe, migrated to an Apple II, and available today on tablets and smartphones, it has sold more than 65 million copies. So hitch up your wagon, load up your supplies, and don't die of dysentery along the way. The best-selling, most important educational computer game of all time, The Oregon Trail, is rolling into the World Video Game Hall of Fame. Now, I'd like to introduce a very special guest, the Oregon Trail's co-creator, Don Rawich, to say a few words.
Thank you very much. It's flattering to be up here, but there were many people who touched the Oregon Trail over the 25 years or so. It was a really active product, primarily on the staff of the Minnesota Educational Computing Corporation. If they were all up here with me today, they would fill this entire room. But from another perspective, the Oregon Trail only exists in the first place because of the three original inventors, myself, Bill Heineman, and Paul Dillenberger. Long ago, we were doing our practice teaching in city schools and sharing a small apartment. The Oregon Trail was born due to the fortuitous collaboration of a computer science guy, a math guy, and a history guy. It's a special honor for the Oregon Trail to be the first computer game designed specifically for education to enter the Hall of Fame. You see, Paul and Bill and I didn't set out in 1971 to make a great computer game. We were motivated to help kids learn. And in my mind, there is no greater calling. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Don. Our second inductee swarmed into arcades in 1978, proving that video games weren't just a passing fad. Designed by Tomohiro Nishikado and released by Taito, this space shooter game challenged players to frantically zap wave after wave of attacking aliens. And, according to legend, its gameplay proved so addictive that the arcade game caused a shortage of 100 yen coins in Japan. In an era when most video games had time limits or ended when a player won a match, this game's high score feature encouraged players to keep coming back to top someone else's score. The high score became standard on countless future games and fueled the arcade boom of the late 1970s and early 1980s. Yet this game also injected new life into the home console market when it became the Atari 2600's first killer app. Millions of consumers purchased the game and the console just to blast aliens in the comfort of their own homes. More than 35 years after its release, this game's thumping, heartbeat-like soundtrack is unforgettable. And its pixelated, octopus-like aliens are some of the most recognized video game images. Simply put, this game is one of the most influential video games ever. It helped propel video games into the mainstream. And now it's the second inductee in the 2016 class of the World Video Game Hall of Fame. It's Space Invaders.
Thanks, Jeremy. While the Oregon Trail and Space Invaders rocked the PC and arcade worlds, our next inductee brought adventure to the home console industry. Originally released in Japan in 1986 as a flagship game for Nintendo's new Famicom Disk System, this game was created by legendary designer Shigeru Miyamoto and was inspired by his childhood expeditions through woods and caves. Miyamoto designed the game to resemble a miniature garden and allowed players to explore in a non-linear, open-world fashion, going anywhere and completing missions in any order they wished. This added an extra layer of complexity that led many gamers to seek tips and tricks, both from fellow players and Nintendo itself. From a technical standpoint, the game is also known for being the first to include an internal battery for backing up saved data. This game's popularity led to the creation of a best-selling franchise that is widely recognized around the world, and only Super Mario Bros. Surpassed its sales figures on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Famously named after the wife of writer F. Scott Fitzgerald, the game's title is now synonymous with adventure, bravery, and heroism. Traits displayed both by the title character and the playable protagonist, who some non-gamers sometimes forget are two different people. But perhaps most importantly, this game taught us that when going out into the world, it's dangerous to go alone. Take this with you. Our next inductee is The Legend of Zelda. And now for some words from Don James, Executive Vice President for Operations at Nintendo of America.
Hi, I'm Don James of Nintendo of America. When the Nintendo Entertainment System came out in 1985, the game everyone talked about was Super Mario Bros. When The Legend of Zelda was first released in Japan in 1986, and then in the United States in 1987, it transfixed generations of game players with its iconic gold cartridge and its open world architecture that brought surprises with every new discovery. On behalf of everyone at Nintendo, we thank the Strong for inducting The Legend of Zelda into the World Video Game Hall of Fame. And thanks to the millions of fans across the globe who have played and continue to support this legendary franchise over the past 30 years.
Thanks to games like The Legend of Zelda, Nintendo took an early lead in the home console market. But in 1991, a new challenger stepped up to the plate from a lesser-known company called SEGA. Attempting to compete with Nintendo's Mario, SEGA hosted an in-house design contest that produced a new mascot codenamed Mr. Needlemouse. He had a cool, hip personality and was styled as an underdog who plowed through any obstacle in his path at lightning speeds. Sales of the Sega Genesis quadrupled when Sega began bundling its console with this character's initial game, temporarily vaulting Sega ahead of Nintendo in the console wars of the early 1990s. Players experienced a unique rush, blasting through levels at super speed with artfully placed slopes, springs, and loop-de-loops, allowing them to reach their goal without ever slowing down. In fact, taking longer than 10 minutes to complete a level resulted in instant death. Sega soon became flooded with stories of consumers obsessed with this blue whirlwind. One claimed his son spent evenings curled into a ball, attempting to roll himself through the house. In 1993, the game's hero became the first video game character depicted as a balloon in Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade. This game and the explosive popularity of its main character allowed Sega to dominate the 16-bit gaming era. It therefore comes as no surprise that our next inductee is Sonic the Hedgehog. And now for some words from the team at SEGA.
Hi, I'm Ivo Griskovich, the Chief Brand Officer for Sonic the Hedgehog here at SEGA. I'm joined by my good friends Hoshina-san, who's the creative director on the brand and has been for many years, as well as Azuka-san, who's been the executive producer on the titles for over 24 years. Yes, if you can believe it, we're celebrating Sonic's 25th anniversary this year, so this award from the Strong Museum for the Hall of Fame induction could not come at a more memorable time. We'd also love to thank the fans who've been dedicated and loyal for these 25 years for this special honor. As gratitude to all of you, we've created a lovingly crafted, hand-drawn piece of art together with our friends at Sonic Team in Japan. Hoshina-san, if you could please do the honors.
違う。こっちです、こっち。This one.
That's it. So as Sonic says, gotta go fast. So we'll keep it very short. So thank you to the Strong Museum, thank you to the fans.
While children have long played at real life with dress-up clothes and dollhouses, most video games have featured fantastic realms of adventure. Our next inductee found fun in the everyday. The game's creator, Will Wright, became fascinated with the rhythms and formulas of normal life, human motivation, and the delicate dance of relationships. He realized he wanted to create a computerized toy, a virtual dollhouse, a life simulator. An earlier game by Wright modeled the growth of cities, but now he recreated how people furnish their homes, how emotional states regulate behavior, and how these factors drive deep human relationships. In his game, people got mad, sad, lonely, bored, and even fell in love. When this game came out in 2000, it took video games into never-before-explored territories of the human heart and mind. It shaped how players saw their own lives. Women and men, adults and children embraced it, making it the best-selling computer game of all time when it was released. Numerous sequels and expansions testified to the enduring popularity of this groundbreaking simulation that expanded the definition of what a computer game could be. Because of its revolutionary effect on play and games, we're pleased to induct into the World Video Game Hall of Fame, The Sims.
The Sims creator Will Wright once described our final inductee as a big playground. Released in 2001 by Rockstar Games, this inductee wasn't the first 3D sandbox game to allow players to freely interact in an open virtual world. But it was the first game of its kind to achieve massive mainstream popularity and widespread critical acclaim. Set in the fictional Liberty City, players controlled a character presented with game missions that resembled the storylines of American gangster films. This game's carjackings, high-speed chases, and destruction renewed the widespread debate over the role of games and violence in society. And although some critics called the game a thug simulator, others defended the sometimes savage but darkly humorous game as gritty social commentary. Ultimately, with so much freedom, players could choose for themselves whether or not their character would be a criminal or ignore the missions and explore the city. By providing players with a license to do virtually anything they wanted to do on foot or behind the wheel, this game signaled that video games did not have to be just for kids. Few games have shaped how we talk about and how we perceive video games more than this one. And that's why our final inductee is Grand Theft Auto 3.
The inductees into the second class of the World Video Game Hall of Fame are the Oregon Trail, Space Invaders, The Legend of Zelda, Sonic the Hedgehog, The Sims, and Grand Theft Auto 3. We'd like to thank Don Rawich, co-creator of the Oregon Trail, for being with us today, and SEGA and Nintendo for their videos. Jeremy Saucier, Shannon Simons, and I will be available for questions and interviews. You're also welcome to play and film versions of some of the inducted games on display throughout the eGame Revolution exhibit on the second floor. Don Rawich will also be available for interviews. Thank you all again for joining us this morning, and congratulations to the 2016 class of the World Video Game Hall of Fame.